What's up, guys, and welcome back to this week's episode of the podcast. Now, before we talk about the game of the weekend, which we're not even going to talk about, but before we talk about my little brother's experience of the weekend, on Friday, the day you guys are listening to this, somebody else is not turning 26. He's turning, I want to guess and say 33.
Yep. That's right.
Got it right. So I'm now going to sit here and embarrass you, sing Harry, happy birthday, and then we get to the podcast. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. You're a poor soul who supports Tottenham. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Harry. Many happy returns. Hopefully, I know it's a Friday, so you're a bit work, but hopefully you do something in the evening.
Oh, no, I'm taking a day off, thankfully.
There you go. I, unfortunately, am not. I'm working like 6 days the next 3 weeks straight. It's a long story. And I'm not going to spend this work podcast ranting about work. So, now that's out of the way. So, on Sunday, obviously played Leicester, as you guys know. It was my little brother's first game. And I don't want to talk about the game too much, but what I will say is, I don't know if you like, I did a match day vlog on TikTok, and the videos are awesome. But let me show you guys some photos, right? Because it was absolutely fucking brilliant. That was a photo of me and him. I don't know how clearly you can see it, but before the game, which was absolutely beautiful. I've actually got a photo of him here, right? And he was singing "Oh When the Spurs" for the intro, and he's full on like giving it, and I loved it. And then there was at one point as well where we were singing. I taught him who Daniel Levy was. And he was singing. At the end of the vlog, I said, we're going to say together 3, 2, 1. He's like, we want Levy out. So we want Levy. And honestly, it's fucking brilliant. And he went to school singing it this morning, apparently, as well. It's just great. We got up on the we got up on the screens as well, which he absolutely loved. It was honestly,
I didn't notice.
Honestly, just apart from the result, it genuinely was as amazing of a day as it could have been. His mum was absolutely amazing, and the whole process of getting to London, the parking and the walk was brilliant. His reaction when he saw the pitch for the first time was incredible. Like reacting to the goal. So when we scored, I was chucking him up and down, whatever. He was facing the goal, and he turns around, looks at me, gives me the biggest fucking hug. And you know what? People can say whatever they like about Richarlison. For the same reason that I will never have anything against Nuno, because of what he did for me the week my friend passed away, in the same way, and no matter what now, unless he goes and plays for Arsenal or West Ham, I'll never ever have a problem with Richarlison, because that memory for me will go down as much as my memory of my first game. Do you know what I mean? It was just absolutely incredible. To share that with him was unbelievable. And every time we went for a goal, he's like, shoot. And Harry, you'll love this. At half time, he said to me, now I watch him in person, I don't think Son's going to score again. And honestly, it was. He said to me, he was crazy.
Son was our best player in the first half. Actually.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, it's crazy because I think he finally understood that what people tell you about football, and then what you see and experience in the moment, you understand why people go to games, why people spend the money.
It's a different experience.
Like when we went into the chicken shop. As soon as the guy saw me, he's like, "Hey, where is he?" And I picked him up, and he shook his hand and whatever, and it was amazing. I didn't pay full price for chicken, and he was like, "Oh, it's so lovely to see you. We've heard so many lovely things from the point in which your big brother said he wanted to surprise you, and Theo loved that, and his mum loved that, and you know, it was so nice." And then I sat in my spot, you know, where I always sit opposite the main electronic board on the shelf side of the stadium. Like I sat there where I always sit on the brick and ate the chicken with him, and it was amazing. And then we walked round the side, and his mum went back to the car and got a coffee, and we were in there together, and then went into the stadium together, and the whole thing was just incredible. He just kept hugging me; he couldn't stop. And for that point, it was amazing, and I hope that it's the first of many. So to Richarlison, first of all, if you're not Richarlison, you don't need to watch this. If you are Richarlison, thank you, because that core memory you gave me on Sunday, celebrating that with my 10-year-old little brother, is something I will take to the grave. I will never, ever forget it. So thank you. But yeah, it was incredible. Do you know what I mean? And him getting involved in the chants, and a guy behind us would start singing "Oh When the Spurs," and he'd jump in before me. And when the Levy out chant started from the South Stand, I'll talk about that with the topic of conversation we're actually going to talk about this episode. But he was joining in with that, like he was asking questions all the time, and it really felt for me like he wanted to be there, and that was the most important thing. So yeah, it was incredible. in terms of the Levy out stuff, because today we're going to talk about the victims of Daniel Levy. And we're not going to talk about the rest of the game because there's no point, because it is the same shit over and over again. So we're actually going to deep dive into the managers we've had since they've taken over and who we think is to blame if they got
You remember a lot of the early managers? I do, but
I don't, but I'm going to go back through a list. But yeah, so that's going to be the topic of conversation for today. What I will say is Daniel Levy is a dictator, because him trying to take down that banner at halftime. And shout out to Jay, by the way. You and I both know Jay. Shout out to Jay, by the way, who organised that banner in secret, got it into the stadium. The message that is sent and the message that is spread, and the fact that so many outlets are catching on to it. Something Harry's always said is the big accounts or the big companies are afraid to talk out about the club. It's
even
too controversial.
Never thought would back it.
Exactly, and it seems even Tottenham Hotspur supporters trust now are distanced themselves from their relationship with the club, which has been their excuse for not pushing the boat out previously, and are starting to be more vocal. And that banner and the places that's been spread out to was incredible. And something I will say is, I don't know about you, but that's the most hostile I've seen the stadium in a very, very long time. Maybe since we've been in there.
3-0 at United.
Yeah, and it took Lucas Moore off. I think that was even more hostile than that. And I would also say that is the loudest the Levy out chants have been in the entire time I've been a Tottenham fan.
Ever.
Like, me and you have been saying this for a very long time. We've known each other for a long time. We've been saying this for a long time. That it needs to be a united front, and it needs to be loud. Because eventually people kind of, and even at the end of the game, the Levy out on the boos, they kind of tried to drown them out with this.
It didn't work.
It was so loud, and you could hear it. I've seen the clips back from like American streams or whatever. You could hear how loud the chants were. You know what I mean? And it wasn't just when we were winning. It wasn't just when we were losing. Even after we scored, there was a bit of celebration. Ball kicked off, 37th, 38th minute, and it was Levy out chance again. And I know one of your biggest criticisms over the years is, people only chant about the owners out when we're up Shit's Creek, not when we're winning. It's now starting to be cool. We've won. We still want you out anyway. You know,
look at United. I don't know if you watched United game on the weekend because I had to because of our league position.
I didn't know.
No, so even when they scored their goal, right, they were singing Glazers out even louder when they were winning.
Yeah. So but right now at United, the Glazers are the problem. It's now Jim Radcliffe.
I know, but I'm saying...
you're saying that's the point. The only way to be heard is to be shouting it in the best times as well as the worst.
Eventually, or gets you mad, we still just sing Levy out every single fucking game.
Yeah. And this is why I want to focus this entire episode on Levy.
When we're winning, we need to sing it. I know it's not that.
Yeah. Because it's a temporary thing. And I think, for me, I was really, really proud that's the first time I can come away from a game going, no matter what the result, ignoring the situation with my brother, even if I was there by myself, that feels like a turning point. Not a turning point for Levy going, but a turning point for it's going to become so vocal and so widespread and so major media, it can't be ignored anymore. You know, and that's something we've both been calling for a long time. You longer than me, but we've been calling that for a long time. Is it needs to be so loud and so aggressive.
People on Twitter for saying Levy out under Poch was crazy, bro.
Like this is the most I've ever seen the Spurs fans in the United front. And even the one thing I disagreed with was people after the game. I understood it. People taking photos of people. Some guy took a photo of people getting the drink. Was like, go and give it to your local businesses after the game. I agree with that. But people moaning at people buying stuff for their kids and whatever, the kid takes priority over Levy. You shouldn't be in a position where you have to choose between, like in my case, buying your little brother a scarf and not, like £5 difference isn't going to make the issue for Levy. The issue for Levy is it being hostile.
Number one. So, you know what we need to do?
Yeah.
We were talking about this before, but other people on another stream last night, actually. And I agreed with what he said, and I've been saying this quite a while. You know these concerts he has, all these other events. We need to leave it out there.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking like obviously maybe it won't be able to get as loud because it'll be full of people watching the concert.
No, but even being outside with Levy out banners at the start,
and then they come to the concert bit to have banners outside. Because what it is, we need to bet the sponsors to see what's going on.
I think this is another thing as well. When you're getting people like Paddy Power involved, when you're getting all these big companies that hold financial sway, that's where it's going to start having the impact. And I want it to be as loud and as hostile as that. Even if we won the Europa League, I want it to be as loud and hostile for us long as possible.
Problem is, though, if we win something, I think a lot of people. Problem our fan base, David, is me and you and others have been Levy out for a long time, and we will not change our stance based on off of one high, or let's say, for example, one dopamine rush. Even if we win something, I'll still be Levy out because the guy's not fit for purpose, right? But there's a lot of people who have turned, for example, now, and I'm not saying they're like this, by the way.
But you're worried that they're going to swing back the minute the fortune changes again.
Even if we win next week somehow against Brentford, we're going to run 2-3 wins. I love us too because we won't get relegated, but like as in, and Ange turns it around. I'm talking hypothetically speaking. I don't want this chance to stop.
Yeah, they need to carry on. Yeah, we could be top of the league and 10 games unbeaten, and if we're top because of we're playing well and we're in good form, and not because the manager's been given everything, then we need to be leaving out. If they go and spend like £100 million. Or if they're going to spend 150 million in the summer and then 150 million again in January and then 150 million again in the summer, and they fix their mistakes and they jump back up again, and then we're being successful as a byproduct of that, then I can understand the chance quieting down because they've accepted responsibility and made a change. But if they go and have another summer where they go and sign a £70 million winger and then don't give a backup centre back and Ben Davies goes, or they don't do this or they don't do that or whatever, and it's the bare minimum again, then they need to. What people need to realise is doing the bare minimum only leads you one way, right? The best example, we use these analogies all the time. The best example, if you're dating somebody, right, and you don't buy them flowers and you don't compliment them and you don't plan date nights and you don't go out of your way to make them feel special and check on them in the morning, check on them even whatever, eventually doing the bare minimum is going to catch up with you because they're going to start looking for elsewhere or your behaviour is going to sabotage it in a way so much that it falls apart to the point where it wasn't even worth having it in the first place.
I'm thinking a different thing, but I'm saying that our problem with the fan base is that every window, and this I'm talking about the bigger accounts, I hate to call people out on this, but I have to do it at this point. They'll come out and say, just to save face, just to be a good fan, I'm just going to use that phrase as a byproduct. This window is amazing. All these big accounts that even you watch, this window's incredible. Ange and Levy have, and I'm like, what planet are you on? The problem with this club is the transfer policy, number one, because we always buy youth, and that's reflected in the window we just had.
Even though me and you disagreed with our summer transfer window, and I can see both sides, Solanke was a great signing.
He will never do what Arsenal did and buy Declan Rice. A sign like that would never happen under Daniel Levy. And
this was my point, though. This is my point, though, right? So in the summer, we disagreed because the youth players that we brought in, I was extremely happy, and I believed that they could become regulars for us. And I know you're still 50-50 on Archie Gray, but the longer the season goes on, the more and more he's showing. This is my point, though. This is my point, though. Regardless of you being 50-50. No, hold on, 2 seconds. The longer it goes on with him, I'm starting to believe that I was right, and I'm convinced that I was right with him, right? However, you were also right in the sense of these players are playing 180 minutes a week because we didn't go and bring somebody in
senior
to embed them in.
Yeah.
You know, and the one thing, and this is the only comment I'm going to make on that, so you can tie that because I want to focus on Levy and I want to focus on that momentum for the weekend. One thing we've openly sat there and turned around and said is managers don't request signings publicly until the very end, right? The entire January transfer window, every week he's asked about what an attacker, and every week he says, we need it, we need it, we need it, we need it, we need it. These players don't have enough left in their tank. We need it, we need it, we need it, we need it, we need it. Now, imagine him in his mind right now, seeing Kolo Muani score, 10, 20 minutes into his debut for Juve, sitting there and going, like, what the fuck? Like, I've made it clear I want help. I've made it clear that I don't want to have to give up.
But also, Ange's situation is a byproduct of himself as well. I'm not going to hide away from that.
To a degree, but I still stand by my point.
Astel uses this phrase, I'm sorry, this is fucking spot on. He's an enabler because he sat there in that window after it and said, I got all the players I want. He says, these are all mine, blah, blah, blah. Rather than someone like Conte who came out and, I know you don't like what he did, but I'm sorry. He publicly said, Spence ain't my signing. Yeah. And that's the problem right there, because then.
But I do believe the players were Ange's. But what he should have said was, this window is a 6 out of what I really wanted, when it should have been a 10 out of what I really wanted. Do you know what I mean?
he didn't even allude to it in an indirect way. He didn't say, "Oh well, some of the signs the club wanted to make." If he even said something like that, some of the signs the club wanted to make, some of them I wanted.
I did, but this is my point though. This is where I think it differs from Conte. Conte wanted players he wanted. He got nothing or Perisic, and players the club wanted. Ange has got the players I believe he wanted, but he didn't get enough of it. But rather than saying, I'm really happy with what I got,
wanted Werner then,
but the quantity wasn't enough.
I think we wanted Werner then, because that's what you're saying. And if you wanted Werner, this guy needs to walk right now.
I think Werner was, because if you look at when the decision was made, I think he was told you can have a winger and a lone striker, or you can have the striker your first choice, which Solanke was, and have a lone winger, and he's prioritised the striker over the winger. And based on how Solanke's played this season, you can see why he made that priority. But he obviously thought Son had a bit more left in him than he has.
Let me land quickly about this transfer. So he signed Gray on Odobert. Apparently he wanted Odobert, by the way. But anyway. And the other one, obviously Bergvall came in. Like what I'm saying, we signed mostly younger players, plus Solanke and Werner, who was a dud on loan, which some would argue, like my dad says, they brought him in because you're just paying his wages pretty much. You're not paying a big fee. And he's trying to fill a slot, let's say. I don't know. Yeah. The problem is, rather than doing a window where you sign 3 or 4 first-teamers and plus 1 youngster, say we signed 4 first-teamers, not Odobert, not Bergvall, we just brought in Gray as like the young player, let's say, the window would have been 10 times better, right? And I'm okay signing young players, but the problem is we do that a majority of the time because they are cheaper, they're on low wages.
Yeah.
I have nothing against signing youth. And the thing is, the situation we're in, I don't blame it individually on Gray or Bergvall. By the way, taking away my opinions on them, the problem is they are not players in this situation that you need. If you're a team like Liverpool, I know it's an extreme example, who are like already established, let's say, it's easier to integrate 2 or 3 youngsters into the side. Spurs are literally like we're in free fall, and you're asking Gray and Bergvall, who are
every
like
week to play 180
not just that, you're asking them to. We're basically a relegation battle. I'm sorry, we are in a relegation battle. These players are not fit for a relegation battle. And again, it's nothing personal to these youngsters, right?
They haven't the experience or the maturity.
I genuinely feel sorry for them. But the problem is when you do a window like that, I'm not saying it was down to happen, by the way.
And even if you get halfway through the season and you find that your misfortunes have changed, like because we discussed it the other week where we said most people do rebuild by bringing the experienced players and the quality first, then the youngsters, whereas Andrew's done it the other way around. Even if you get to that point, then January is the perfect opportunity to go, right, I'll bring in a first-team winger.
Last week, though, they gave him 350 million, and maybe they will argue, well, we gave you 350 million on players. You should be doing better, which... Whilst I fucking hate Levy, I'm going to spend another hour talking about him. We should not be where we are.
No, but I still stand by my point. I agree with your point though that if we had listen, we look at where our major injuries are. If we had an adequate, no disrespect to Ben Davies because he's been fucking unbelievable, and I thought he was actually quite good again at the weekend.
It was all right.
He's been a real consistent performer at centre back. But if we had a top quality left back rotation, or at least a good Premier League experienced rotation left back, then that's a problem solved. If we had a winger that was actually capable of putting the ball into the back of the net and crossing the ball from the left, then I think if you look at Sonny when he's been at his best, it's when he's had chance to rest. He's not getting. They look at Kulusevski. I saw people. He was
still on his feet.
I saw people hammering Kulusevski about the game. He's exhausted.
Also, nobody. He's a fucking winger.
No, but not just that though. But no one can sit there and tell me.
It's like the worst position to put a tight player on the wide area.
But it's what I'm saying though. We haven't got any other options. And
he could have put, in my opinion, he could have played more Son or more Richarlison and Son as the front line. Then put Kulusevski in the 10, Sarr with Bissouma or Bentancur. And he could have done something simple. Reguilon at left back, Spencer right back.
Reguilon was fucking dreadful, by the way. I don't want to talk about that guy.
I'd rather see him. Gray at right back, rested Porro. He could have done so many different things. And I'm not saying he would have solved all the issues, but we've got a game on Thursday as well. And also it's just, I think there's some really amateur mistakes which could improve us, not vastly.
But again, though, you look at the way we played in moments on Sunday, and despite the
But this is the problem. It's just moments. It's
no,
like
no, but
5
let me
minutes.
finish. Despite the tired legs, have you seen the screenshot of Pedro Porro when he's able to cross the ball?
Yeah, I know. I saw him.
Bro, listen. Oh, it's embarrassing. Archie Gray made a ridiculous run to get into the right position. Fucking Mikey Moore's at the back post, completely unmarked. I'm just.
But that would have got a point. He wouldn't have won us the game.
No, but what I'm saying to you is, in our current form, a point allows you to start. And bearing in mind, that would have been 2-2 with 20 minutes to go. Anything's possible at that point.
Personally, I thought once they scored their second, that was game over.
Yeah, I felt that way as well. But
the problem is, it's because Rude went to a 5-3-2 even in the last 10 minutes. Like
yeah,
you know,
it was a nightmare. And by the way, Leicester's left back, by the way, ugly fucking looking bastard. The amount of times he threw Kulusevski to the floor was unbelievable. Anyway, we're not going to talk about the game because it was just pissed me off. But
what I'm trying to say to you is, Ange is the reason we're not winning matches and we're not higher up the table. But Levy's the reason we're not winning trophies. That's all I'm going to say.
I still think Levy has a bigger part in.
He's going to take us down if he stays. I'm sorry.
I still stand by my point that the club have had an opportunity to rectify it in January, and then within 6 weeks following that, you can really tell who's at fault.
How are we going to rectify it?
No, right. You can't tell me now that if we sign Colin Moani, we're going to sign a starting left winger quality, and we're going to sign a starting left back or rotating left back.
It wouldn't have solved the problems.
It would have solved.
It wouldn't solve the problems because Sonny
because it allows you to rest players.
But he's not that I agree with the way he's been resting some players, but he has been doing that. But the problem with his style is the players come back and then someone, say Richarlison came back, right? He got injured already, but say someone comes back, say next week Van der Ven comes back. Yeah. By then, Jagreeson will probably pull up with an injury. I'm just saying, like, these players actually need less of a workload, right? And he's still playing this intense style. Bear in mind the style doesn't work in a relegation battle. Like, we're going to get cooked.
Yeah, that part I agree with, and that's why I think he's
seeing the players at the same time as well. And it's like, he's talking about Romero and Van der Ven coming back today. They're close or something. I can't remember what the phrase.
Yeah, they're due back.
Like, that's great, yeah, but I'm sure Davis.
I think right now, I'll tell you what'll happen. We won't get a player in January, and
I think we'll get one.
No, I don't think we'll get anyone. And the minute we lose at Anfield, he'll be fired. And the club will go, we sacked him because he failed to win the two-legged tie that he already had the lead in. That's what'll happen.
I don't know.
I'll tell you why that'll happen, right? It'll be Mason for Villa. Oh, well, he's inexperienced. It's not his fault he lost a cup game. And then... Yeah, fuck that. Anyway, right, let's talk about Levy because I don't want to talk about the game anymore. Fuck this shit. Right. Tottenham managers.
Oh wait, nothing in the attacks were personal, which is I'm fed up with this manager.
Yeah. Well, the one advantage I will say, the one slight advantage I will say, is the fact that some of these players like Archie Gray, he looks a lot better now than he did when he first played his first few games.
Playing regularly,
but that's what I'm saying. I think the growth is.
No, that's like everyone uses it as a silver lining, but I just don't think they're the players you need for a relegation battle. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not against them personally. Like, I don't hate Bugwell. I don't hate Gray. I just think you need like people like Palacios, Sandro, Park, like these actual like strong. Like, the problem with our team is when we went 2-1 down, I could see their heads dropped. Like, we have no mental strength at all. The manager doesn't have mental strength. I see Rude fighting on the touchline during the game. And bear in mind, Rude's not very experienced as a manager. And I see Ange just standing there just complaining about the refereeing decision. I'm like, mate, grow up and fix your tactics.
Right. Let's go on to the actual topic because I can't answer away anymore. Right, I'm going to start with Glenn Hoddle.
Glenn Hoddle, yeah. I remember some of that, so.
Go on. How do you feel?
Wait, are you going to start with George Graham, or was that not him?
He's not on my list.
George Graham, I think, was the Levy, wasn't it? He sacked him like before we played Arsenal in the semi-final.
That's 1998. That was before they took over. They took over in 2001, right?
Oh, right. But anyways.
So then we had David Pleat as
he was interim
caretaker manager, and then we had Glenn Hoddle. So let's go with Glenn Hoddle.
I mean, Pleat was interim twice anyway. But anyway, Glenn Hoddle, yes, from what I remember, he wanted Morientes, who ended up going somewhere else. And he wanted some other strikers. I think we even went with Eto for some point. And he even said, you can go read the quote. I saw it on Twitter actually the other day. also certain players, and he wanted to refresh the squad with younger players. Actually, ironically, because we had an aging squad like Les Ferdinand up front, Teddy Sheringham, who were like 30s, let's say, at Darren Anderton. I'm just naming off some players, by the way. And he wanted to sign some younger players to start blooding them in because we had a relatively experienced squad. They were just on the decline, let's say, right? And he wanted to start refreshing them, and they ended up signing Jamie Redknapp on a free transfer. Who, bear in mind, Redknapp came with like knee injury or something, or was basically they had to like sign on a pay as you play or something because he kept getting injured, which was a thing back then. And yeah, Redknapp did give his all for the Spurs, as much as I know people hate Jamie Redknapp, but he did score against Arsenal. But like they weren't the players that obviously Hodder wanted, and he didn't think that the club and Levy was serious about football. Basically, that's what if you read his quotes, that's kind of what it implies. And he's to be fair to Glenn Hoddle, he might be a rubbish commentator, but he repeatedly has criticised the club for the way they treat him and the way they treated like other managers.
Do you think, as a manager, he had, because this is how I'm going to weigh up whether I think it's 50-50 or whether I think one side's directly to blame. Do you think he was good enough as a manager and had a style good enough as a manager to be successful with more investment?
Personally, bear in mind he was England manager actually at some point. Glenn Hoddle.
Because from talking to my stepdad always said
innovative in his ideas. Actually, he was kind of a bit ahead of his time because he liked to play a 3-5-2, 5-3-2, something with that variation. I would say yes because I think he had a lot of the fans on side because let's bear in mind he's a club legend.
Yeah.
He played relatively attacking football, but it was organised. It wasn't a mess. And I do think with the right backing, could have actually done something. Maybe not win the league, but maybe scrape the European spot at least, and maybe done something a bit in Europe or like win a Carling Cup or FA Cup because he has Spurs in it. Like Spurs is part of him. Let's be honest,
yeah.
Like as much as some people don't like him that much about his commentary, and he constantly criticises the club, and a lot of people, though, I guess, Levy and don't like that. But like he's Tottenham. Like, let's be honest, he's Tottenham. So I think he would have succeeded to like some sort of degree, in my opinion, at least.
Okay,
so I remember it's a little I saw as well. I do remember some of it.
Like, I think that's 60% blame on Levy then, or 65% blame on Levy then.
65 is about right.
65-35 split because I think there's too many unknowns, and at that point in time, with
also I was too young to recall everything.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Right, Jackie Santini. I have no idea who the fuck that is.
I'll tell you about him. So you wouldn't have liked him. He was like ultra defensive manager. We did actually win some games though. Like we went away to Newcastle, which was quite a big victory at the time. And he signed. To be fair, this manager, I'd give it like he says Levy didn't back him and he walked away, and I kind of agree with him.
Wait, he quit.
Yeah, he quit. He walked.
Oh shit!
And then Joel took over. I'm sure we'll talk about Joel in a minute.
Yeah.
But so to be fair to me, he did walk away. He says he wasn't backed. I think it's a bit, in this case, I know this was probably against the grain, a bit 50-50 because we had the new director of football, Frank Arneson, who was bloody brilliant, by the way. Probably one of the best directors of footballs ever. Chelsea poached him later on, by the way, and he did bits at Chelsea. I'm just being honest. Like he came from PSV Eindhoven, but he was brilliant. Like he scouted players, he got players. And that's when Levy went to the director of football model with the manager or head coach, whatever you call it. And maybe Santini felt he got some players he didn't want from Arneson and the club. But at the same time, we had a very extremely aging squad I alluded to under Glenn Hoddle, and they refreshed. They signed, I think, 10 to 12 players that summer. Like all young players like Paul Robinson, Sean Davis, Pedro. Like we did refresh the squad.
Yeah.
I'm kind of 50-50 on that one with Santini.
It almost kind of sounds like he walked away to save his own skin.
Yeah, sort of.
Rather than because he didn't necessarily get what he needed.
There's a bit of both, to be honest, because I kind of see where he was coming from. Like that's why I said 50-50, because...
Okay.
Yeah. I'm saying 50-50, because it's a bit on him, a bit on the club.
Right. The next one, now I don't remember a lot of him, but I know what he was as a person, and I know how loved he was by the fans. And Martin Jol was at the club for 3 years, and from what I know of him,
I can talk to you a lot about him. So
go for it. This is like the first podcast
Martin
in a while where I've
been
been
quiet. I first started going like every single home game pretty much. Was Martin Jol. So for some funny reference, he actually looks a bit like my uncle. So he used to always, me and Dad used to joke he looks like my uncle. Brilliant. I'm not joking, by the way. If you see them side to side, they're quite similar. But anyway, so he was, for the resources he had, in my opinion, he overperformed. Like, he got us top 5 2 years in a row, and the last season, the club definitely fucked him. So basically, the beginning, he took over mid-season. He got us playing better football, I'd say, and from someone who comes across being more pragmatic, I guess, on this podcast, he played organized attacking football. Like at the beginning, he was a bit of a mess, but to be fair to him, he just took over like the first few games. But he got us playing good football. We were winning games where in the past we weren't. He got us back into Europe on a shoestring, if I'm being honest. He got so many free transfers like Timo Tainio, Ricardo Rocha, Mido on loan. Until Berbatov, he didn't really get like a big signing, if I'm being honest. And he really wanted a winger, and they kept buying him young players like Bale. I know Bale turned out to be how he was. Reto Ziegler, you probably know him, Callum Davenport, Nero Pamro, all these random players that you've probably never heard of. But there were a lot of players that the club transposely wanted, younger players. And this is where I come back to like it was a proper rebuild, I guess, in some ways, because he gave these players all debuts from like day one. Like Ziegler got his debut from day one. Bale, first day, he got convinced Martin Jol to go to Tottenham instead of Man United. So you got to give credit for Jol in that respect. But, like, he loved the club. But the last window he had before it started to go wrong, we signed a certain Darren Bent, who I'm not a Spurs
He's
fan
a
hate.
prick, by the way.
So, by the way, that window, Martin Jol wanted a left winger. And what did they do? They went and signed Darren Bent. And bear in mind, at the time, we had Defoe, Keane, and Berbatov, so he didn't want another striker.
Yeah, we didn't need him.
He actually didn't want one. Like, he was fine with 3.
Yeah.
He wanted, like, in a winger, another, like, I can't remember if it was 2 wingers. Basically, he wanted another positions. And a club went and bought players, like, he didn't need in some ways, right? And then eventually, he kind of lost the dressing room because...
Didn't we give Darren Bent a stupid wage at the time as well, which
he
was
was
made
one of
him
the
almost
highest
like a...
players, I think, at the club. But he came from Charlton with quite a big reputation, but my dad never liked him. Like, even when he was
I've never been a fan of Darren Bent.
he was like, he's bang average, basically, without saying it in Greek. But so, like, for me, Yol was kind of fucked by the club, especially because obviously his whole character, Man United, after we didn't make top 4, and also Berbatov. He got given Berbatov, but that window, another set of young players. Like Joel had a team in '06, right? You probably don't remember this. If it wasn't for Lasagna, we would have finished above Arsenal. And that Arsenal ran like 2 years ago with the Invincibles.
Yeah.
So he overperformed with what resources he was given. Massively overperformed. If you really deep it, like as a kid, I didn't realize it. When I've looked back and watched some of the games, I've looked at the players he had and compared him to like he.
Do you think the transfer policy in his last summer though?
Jose's Chelsea 2-1, the first one we had in against Chelsea in like 15, 16 years. He gave us. I know in the cup he didn't do well against Arsenal, but in with their reserve team. But he gave us a fighting chance to get the bigger sides. Okay, we didn't do the thing because we didn't have the quality. He gave us European football we didn't have for donkey's years.
Yeah.
But for the resources he had, he overperformed. Like,
do you think that he was a downfall of his own success because he overperformed so well?
The fans didn't want him to go. That's the thing.
No, but this is my point. Do you think the club looked at it and went, actually, you've been so successful with what you've already had, well...
Not give you more.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually that. Like, for me, again, it's the mismanagement of the money in some respects. Like I said, Darren Bent was not a player he wanted. It
wasn't how much was spent, it was who it was spent on that was the problem.
Because the problem with the model we had, right, is Arneson left to Chelsea, right? And we brought in Kamoli, who I know he got Bale and a few other good players, and like Kabul, who obviously came back in the second season. I read that was a lot better, but he wanted a few other players kind of behind the manager's Joel's back, right? With Levy. I know sometimes we're playing in that way, but he wasn't happy with the window, even though we spent, say, big on Ben, which is our club record signing at the time, 16, 17 million. He didn't actually want Ben. He wanted a winger. I think it was Stilian Petrov at Villa, or Martin Petrov, sorry, at Villa. That's the one I remember always hearing. And apparently someone told me he wanted some Dutch players. I don't remember the names, but he wanted some Dutch players. I mean, of course, got Davids, but he in '06, we were probably like 4 top players away from like doing something. But obviously, Carrot left, and we signed Didier Zakora, and obviously Bertov came in, so we did improve in some respects and dropped in others. What I'm saying is he had us. I think he overperformed what he had personally. So for me, even though he was sacked at half time, and obviously Ramos ended up winning a trophy after this, but I think it was like
Do you think
80%
he laid
Levy.
the foundations for the success that
Where
came
we are now,
afterwards?
not obviously where we are now. You know what I'm trying to say, right? But as in like where the club is now in terms of back in Europe.
Yeah.
If it wasn't Martin Yol, we could be in the wilderness. I know it's not mad thinking,
Yeah.
but we could be in the wilderness.
No, but
Like
what I'm saying is the success that followed the year that
after
he
him,
was sacked. Do you
yeah,
think that was because of the team he built?
yeah.
Okay.
Majority of that team when the final was his, apart from maybe like one player.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go into the interim between because it's pointless. Um,
it was Ramos.
one day Ramos takes over in 2007. No, I don't remember anything. I don't even remember the League Cup final.
I'll
Winning, I
tell
can't
you
lie.
quite briefly. So obviously he won the cup,
Yeah.
and we all thought this is the turning point for the club. We're gonna get into the Champions League under Ramos. We're gonna go big. We're going to win
Yeah.
Europe. And bear in mind, Ramos came from Seville, and they beat us, I think, the year before in the UEFA Cup, the old UEFA
Yeah.
Cup. He beat Martin Yol, I remember, in the two-legged tie. And he won, I think, the UEFA Cup with Seville. I
Yeah. It
know a
wouldn't
lot of managers
surprise me.
do. But and he ended up managing Real Madrid later in his career. But Ramos was not backed. Like in his actual summer he got afterwards. I know he got sacked 2 points after 8 games, but we sold Berbatov and Keane. He got Fraser Campbell with Pavlyuchenko as replacements.
Don't diss
Uh,
Big Pav.
Dos Santos. You
Oh
probably
my.
don't.
Yeah, I remember Dos
Yeah, because
Santos.
of the guess who in it.
Yeah.
But he got a lot of drops basically. David Bentley. I know Modric joined, but that was more of a club signing. I know he did real well in the end, but like if you looked at our midfield, it kind of reflects a lot of the midfield we have now. If I'm being honest, very lightweight. He played Modric and Genius in midfield because we sold basically even our like DM basically,
Yeah.
or he was injured. I can't remember what it was, but like the club really did like mess him up. And for me, that was like 70% Levy, like 70% was Levy.
Yeah.
And I know by that point I know he lost a lot of the dressing room, but if they bought him the players he wanted, then maybe it would have been, I think 70%, 60%, something like that for with Levy. Bear in
Okay.
mind, he did win us the cup, so
Yeah, so you have to kind of give him a little bit more credit for that. Okay.
he came
Okay.
mid-season as well to do that. So yeah,
Then in 2008, he's replaced by Harry Redknapp. Now, I say probably became a Tottenham fan. I became a football fan in 2000, summer 2010. So the 2010-2011 season is my first proper season following Spurs, which is smack bang in the middle of the Harry Redknapp era. So I can actually talk a little bit about this.
my favorite era, by the way. Anyway,
One of the things I loved about the Redknapp era was the 4-4-1-1 and how quickly our wingers broke. And
how solid we were at the back as well was
just,
nice.
I don't know, it felt, if you looked at it, it felt basic. If you listened to a breakdown of how we played, it felt basic. But it
But it
was
was, it
so
really was.
effective.
Yeah.
You know, you've got Lennon across to Sandro, Lennon across to Crouch in the Champions League. Um, I
Big up
just,
that thing away at the Milan. Sorry, big up.
yeah, like
Yeah.
just everything about that squad was such vibes.
Honestly, for me, that was my favorite Tottenham Hotspur team and squad like ever. Like
Yeah, I think so.
I know a lot of people will say Poch, and we'll talk about him later on, but for me, that's a personal thing because I grew up with a lot of those players like Lennon,
Yeah,
Bale, Huddleston, like a lot of
there's
those players.
only one
Michael
Aaron
Walton,
Lennon.
Kabul, he brought him
Yeah,
back. Dutch and Bonda Defoe, like a lot of those players I grew up, or I kind of watched come of age. I think that's the right word to say. And because it's from my younger years, like Bale, I was there.
Benoit Assal-Cotter at left back.
Mate, he was sick,
He
don't it?
was.
But like,
I remember all the training stories about him. They was just so funny. Like he'd just rock up late. He'd rock up like in his designer shit,
yeah.
eat his food, go out there, do a couple of sprints, play on game day, and then he'd be sick. Like
He was very relaxed. But
yeah,
for
the
me,
Crouch
like,
and Defoe as
mate, that
well.
was
Just
falling on him.
I loved it.
Like for me, the first till we got Champions League, I have to admit, Levy backed him. Like I thought the club was going somewhere, and this is when, for me, it started going downhill. So we got Van der Vaart, which is kind of lucky. But if we're being
No,
honest,
no, 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 no.
that window,
Sorry, I can't help it.
Red Up wanted a striker, a top
Yeah.
striker. He wanted I think another centre half because obviously we had the
Didn't he
King
want
injury.
Louis Saha at that point?
No, I'm talking about the window after that.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's in 2012. Well, no, that's when I went fully Levy out. But basically, that summer after we made Champions League, we got Van der Vaart, which kind of saved Levy's skin a bit.
Yeah.
But that window, if I'm being honest, was not that great.
Yeah.
Redknapp continuously said, despite the fact he had Defoe, Crouch, and and at the time we didn't have Adebayor, Defoe, Crouch, and Pavlyuchenko as his front line. He really said, in order for this team to like
It
take the
needs
step up,
a well-beer
we
almost.
need like a top class striker. And obviously, Ledley King's injury issues were a continuous thing, by the way. So,
Can we just say, by the way, that's nothing against those three strikers because they were absolutely fucking vibes.
no,
And they gave us
I
some of
love
the best
Defoe.
goals.
So,
And
but yeah,
the other morning, actually, like I was scrolling through
yeah.
TikTok, like 1:30 in the morning, and I watched like a 10-minute Pavlyuchenko at Spurs highlight reel. Mate, just this guy, man. He was just
Did you
so.
see his goal against United? Was it United or Chelsea? I remember. I can't remember which one
Oh,
it
I
was.
can't fucking remember.
Must have
But,
the
mate,
left.
some
He
of his
bangs,
goals were
bangs one in.
hilarious.
He bangs
Like,
one in. Like,
it's
yeah, I think
crazy.
it was Chelsea or United. I can't remember which game it was. We won 1-0, and I think Pavlyuchenko scored the winner. But he used to come on and just score bangers out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's our Berbatov replacement. But anyway, so like for me, the first 2 years that I even got in Cranjar that January, I remember because we had an injury crisis or
Yeah.
something. Like he did get him a lot of the players he wanted. Like I'm not going to sit here and say he didn't the
Yeah.
first 2 years, but once we made Champions League, Renat was like, we need to make the step up.
Yeah.
In order to do that, we need like the elite players to say, right? And we linked with De Rossi, Aguero even. We actually made a bid for Aguero. But Levy Spears were like half the price of the player they wanted. So
They
they
always
wanted 50
are.
million, he was like 20 million. And Rossi was like 30, bid like 15. Like Renat was beating this drum because of Ledley King's injury issues as well, continuously. As you know, he played like once a week. He only
Yeah, he
swam.
didn't even
Like
train. Like,
we need a long
yeah.
term player for him as well, like replacement for him as well. And obviously just top class centre half regardless, anyway, because we had some already. Like Kabul was great, Gallas was good on this day, Dawson was solid, and King was there, but King was so in and out.
Yeah.
But he banged the team in the centre half, and we needed like a top striker. That was his thing, I remember, to make like the step. 2 or 3 top class players made the step. So after we made Champions League, we didn't do that step. Okay, we got Van der Vaart, luckily, but we didn't do that step. Season after that, to Levy's credit, he kept Modric away from Chelsea for a year.
Yeah.
He's very firm. But that window, again, got Adebayo on loan, yeah.
That's a window where you can convince Modric to stay, and again, he just kind of
So we
delayed
may
the
sign
inevitable.
Parker, who, to be fair, Renard did one.
Yeah.
And like that window that's not when I'll give it like 6, 7 out of 10, to be honest. Like we've got a few players we needed, but like again, not enough. We didn't do the extra mile, like in terms of like say squad depth. Missing there, we signed Peanut on like 2 million, and he got sold straight away like after a year because it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
You probably don't remember Peanut, Tottenham. It was not a good.
I remember
idea.
a very little bit of him.
Like he didn't play very many games. He used to use him as like rotation in the Champions League. So he played like Southampton away or something on the weekend or something away. I remember he rotated Bale and Lennon, and he put in Cranjar and Pino on the wings to rest Bale and Lennon for the midweek game, basically. So he's still like that. His rotation was like that sort of thing. So he would like mix sides, let's say. But when it got to January 2012, this is when I went fully Levy out. We're like third in the league, and we're not crying out, we need like 2 top class players to like make the next step. And he goes, the club, if they wanted to, could spend the money to make the step. Basically, I can't remember the exact words he used, but something he alluded to that thing. And what did we do that January? We went and signed Saha and Nelson on the free transfers.
Yeah,
and that was it. Literally, I was like, that was me leaving out because I was like, after telling me for years and years, make the Champions League to
progress you realise it was a mirage, and every time you get closer, it gets further away.
That's what you want.
Yeah. I definitely think, in terms of blame, I definitely think it was 80% Levy, 20% Redknapp, because from what I remember, because for me, Redknapp was just vibes. He was a very likable guy.
Hey, I love Redknapp.
Very came across really well. Like I say, it's my first core memories of being a Spurs fan. Like if he hadn't have been the manager,
yours was Redknapp.
Yeah, if he hadn't been the manager at that time, then maybe I wouldn't have had the whole.
A lot of fans became Spurs fans because of Redknapp.
Yeah, like for me, so obviously I watched the 2010 World Cup, and that's where I'd always played football, but never bothered watching it. It was just boring to me. Same as Formula One at that time. I couldn't watch cars going round. Still can't. But 2010 World Cup, obviously in South Africa, and it was a big thing. It was my last year of primary school, and it was a massive thing, and I could still sing every single lyric to Waving Flag Now. I remember it all like it was yesterday, even though the fact that it was 15 years ago. No. Yeah, 15 years ago. Fucking hell, I'm old. And I remembered every word like I still remember every word like yesterday. And I used to piss everybody off in my class because I was swinging on my chair and singing it to my heart's content. But anyway, and that was the problem. And I remember like I'd never really been bothered about watching football, and then we watched the opening game, and I think it was the opening game. And the school had finished like half time or something, and I went home and I was like, "Oh, I really want to watch the second half." And then obviously it was on like ITV or whatever at the time, so you could watch it. And then my stepdad was like, "Oh, well, like why don't you support a football team?" And I was like, "Well, who the hell do I support? I ain't got a clue about what. Let me support
Oh
England
no,
or
oh no,
whatever."
yeah.
And he goes, "Listen, read these," and they were the programs from the year before. And then he got me some Champions League programs from one of his friends that always went to
Oh,
games,
nice.
and then that
I used to collect
reading
them.
those programs, and then into that season where Bale broke out. Then, so I've been
Oh
reading
mate,
the programs, and I remember I had a program against Young Boys, I had a program from the game against FC20, I had the
that was a
AC
game.
Milan
Yeah,
quarterfinal one, and like they were all people that went to games more regularly than he did, and that gave him the program. So I started reading the programs more and more and more, and then it got to one of the group stage games in Champions League. I can't remember who it was. And it's always on ITV. Like you got half an hour before you go to bed. Bearing in mind, I'm like 11 at this point, guys. Right. So,
it's
and
funny because I remember going to
this
those
was
games.
this was
Oh,
before my mum cheated on my stepdad and all that shit happened. If you follow my TikTok, you follow my social for a while, you know it already anyway. But yeah, so this is when my life. This is the last really like 2 stable years of my childhood before it all went to shit. And yeah, so he was like, "Oh, like I'm gonna watch the game. Like, do you want to come and watch it?" And at this point, we had like a massive wooden garage in the back garden that had a very thin layer of insulation in it, and a 4 bar going from the house to the back. And it's a big. I'm talking like widescreen, thick with 4Cs level TV. That's got to be what like my iPad right now, right? That's my iPad screen size. Imagine that being the front of the TV screen. The back of the TV was about here. It was about here. That was a fucking massive fuck off thing. And bearing in mind, this is like early 2000s, right? So mid 2000s. So he said, "Oh, come watch this half hour." And I don't remember anything of that game. And then he goes, "Oh, like we've gone through, we're playing again." And then that was the Bale game. And I remember going to bed at half time because at this point it's a school night. In floods of tears, we were 3-0 down, 4-0 down.
4-4-4.
4-0 down, and Gomez got sent off, which is why I have such an grievance against Gomez. For those of you guys that haven't listened to the podcast before, I'd always say about how much I hate Gomez, and that's why, right? And anyway, I went to school the next day, and some guy had a Spurs Champions League lanyard on. I was like, "What you got that for?" "You're not a Tottenham fan." He went, "Yeah, I am. I was at the game last night." "Did you see what happened?" I went, "No." He went, "No, did you not see Gareth Bale?" "No." And obviously, when I got home, the second half had been recorded, so I watched the game, and then from that moment onwards, I've never let go.
That's an interesting way to get into Tottenham with Bale. I mean,
Yeah, but that team for me and that group of players, like I was just a fan of football and playing football, and that summer changed everything for me.
Rafa van der Vaart was that summer, I think.
Yeah. So then that's when that kind of affiliation came in, and
Oh no,
then
no, no. That was summer before you. Rafa van der Vaart was already in the team by the time you were watching. Yeah, you were. Yeah, he was already.
right, yeah, I can't remember. But my first kit was the light blue astronomy one with
Yeah,
the
I
black
know
on one and the white on the other. So that, for those guys that haven't seen a photo, my little brother wore that on Sunday. I actually forgot to get it off of him, so his mum's got it. But my little brother wore that on Sunday. That's my first ever Spurs shirt. And he wore that
Oh,
on
I remember that
Sunday.
kit. That's when Bell scored that volley
Yeah,
against Stoke.
against Stoke. Yeah,
Oh, that's what I was associating that kit with.
he wore that on Sunday. I wanted Van der Vaart on the back, but I didn't have enough of my money from Christmas and my birthday to pay for that, so I could just get the shirt. But yeah, that's how I then became a Tottenham fan. So for me personally, Harry Redknapp held a massive part of why I'm a Tottenham fan. And Aaron Lennon, Gareth Bale, Peter Crouch, Jermaine Defoe, Van der Vaart, Michael Dawson, Benoit Sabakoto, not Gomez. Like that group of players, for me, that's my first core memory of Tottenham. Like apart from outside of like the odd, like, I remember Berbatov a tiny bit. I remember Edgar Davids a little bit, but then
You
the little
probably remember
things as
like
a
very vague memory when you were like
yeah,
very
as a
young.
kid, like you remember, you recognise the players and you recognise
It's
some
like
of the
me
goals he
with
scored.
Ginola. You don't know Ginola that well, but
Yeah,
Stephen Card was like my favorite player as a kid.
yeah.
Apparently, I don't remember him that vividly. I just remember him scoring like a few bangers. That's why, because he scored a great goal against United.
Yeah.
Anyone watching this will know what I'm talking about. Like Ginola, I actually was lucky enough to meet Ginola as a kid at the cup
Yeah.
final that we won in '99 or '98. Sorry. Um, like anyway, it's a long story, but like I remember those players vaguely. Like I do remember some games. Like I went to my first North London derby was 1-1, and Ziga scored a banger from a free kick, and we actually thought we were going to win the game. Obviously, Arsenal scored the equaliser.
Yeah.
But like I do remember sorts of, and obviously one of my first derbies, I think my first one we lost 3-1, and Carney scored for fucking Arsenal. I remember. Like I have vague memories, but if I can remember the players who were there,
Yeah, you can remember a little bit, but it's not as definitive. Like
two or
this,
three, like
yeah.
Card, Ginola.
Whereas
Like
your next period is your
around.
definitive period. It's the same for me.
Like
Like I
Joel's
remember patches, but then Redknapp was my definitive period. Yeah, so I stand by the point. I think 80-20%. I think naturally managers would always play a slight part in it, regardless. But I think 80%, like Redknapp could have had so much more. And I remember that Luis Saha transfer because my stepdad was like really, really pissed off at the time, and I didn't know why. And he went, "Well, we've just signed someone who's useless." And obviously, I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And I said, "What do you mean?"
Like,
well, he used to be good, but now he's not. I said, "Well, why can't he go back to being good?" And obviously, I'm a child at this point, so I haven't got a fucking clue, really.
You go, fucking wake up.
Exactly. Then Villas Boas. Now, I can't lie, I was never really a fan of Villas Boas.
I wasn't either, to be honest. Shall I tell you what I thought about AVB, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't. The reason why we're not a fan of AVB is because we both like Redknapp. Let's be completely fucking honest.
Yeah.
But I still gave him a chance because he did come off the back of that Porto season, and I know he failed at Chelsea, or well, I don't know what happened at Chelsea. Let's say it didn't work out. Let's say, but I still wanted to give the guy a chance, and he was one of those new age managers that tried to play a high line with like Dawson, and but his tactics were like meh. Like he was trying to be like innovative with very old school players, if that makes sense. That's why I saw it. But he did, to be fair to him, what little he got given, I thought he did all right. Like he turned Bale into, for me, a world class player. Like he used what resources he had. Like like to a lesser extent, what Jose did to like Kane and Son, right? He did it with Bale, right? To a lesser extent, because I think a lot of that with Bale was himself rather than just coaching. Like it was a bit of both, let's say. But I do think the board did mess him up. I know that Fantastic Seven, right? I'm not saying Bale leaving was the board's fault. Bale wanted to leave.
That's not the problem, but how the money was spent, I think, was the problem.
He wanted Hulk, Moutinho, which we should have got over the line. Willian, okay, I don't give the board, like, it's not completely their fault. But, like, Hulk was definitely one. Moutinho was definitely one. He didn't want some of the seven, I remember.
Yeah.
For me, it's like 60 to 70, Levy's 30 to 40.
Yeah. Because you look at players like Ericsson that were fantastic, even like Lamella, even though he was never the best player, the duration of how long he played and the effort he gave and the fact that...
I mean, Ericsson was the biggest find of that whole seven, really. Let's be honest. Like, Chadley was all right later on, but I wasn't... Okay, I'm quite neutral about AVB, does that make sense? Like, I wasn't against him, but I wasn't like...
I think you're kind of right. The reason why I had so much dislike of AVB was because Bale went and because of my love for Redknapp. Like, it was so hard to let that go. Yeah, I'm going to say... I'm going to go 65, 35, yeah.
Right, I think.
On to the next one then, and I don't care what you say, he's a prick. I hated Tim Sherwood. I still hate him. He didn't get any
signings, so I don't know.
But regardless of whether signings he got, he was just shit. And he can sit there and talk about, I discovered Harry Kane.
I don't think he's the topic of conversation because did he even have a January window? No, he did because he got Zeki Friars on. Zeki fucking Friars. But no, like for me, that window's kind of moot point because like we weren't going to get relegated. We might make Europe. For me, it was. But
in my opinion, though, Tim Sherwood didn't do enough as a manager to warrant. Obviously, every manager needs some signings, but it wasn't like he blew us out of the water. You could see.
Levy, unfortunately, for me, was never going to give him anything because he was never going to stay. Like it was just a 6-month thing or 3-month thing, whatever it was. But to be fair to Sherwood, as much as I don't like him as a person, he did call out the club loads in his tenure. Like I remember we lost 3 or 4-0 to Chelsea away. And this is when Vertonghen was a mess, by the way. Like when AVB left, Vertonghen was all over the place. I didn't know if he was going to stay or go as well. And it was kind of reflected in the way we were playing. Like it was just a calamity. I'm sorry. Like I hate to say Vertonghen this way.
The thing of the play he became, you sit there and think, what the fuck, like
his head wasn't in it. Basically, that's how I saw it. Until obviously Poch turned up and must have fixed it up with him, I guess. But like for me, Sherwood's not really worth talking about because the club was never going to get relegated. The club was never going to finish top four under him, and he even said that himself. Sherwood, we were kind of in the stage where we're kind of in limbo for however long his tenure was, 3, 4 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
And the Zeki Fry signing was kind of like a moot point because it was clearly a club signing. Like, but I'm not saying Sherwood's back because.
But no offense though, but I feel like if Sherwood.
What I'm saying is I don't even want to rate this because I just don't think it's even.
I do understand that premise, but in my opinion, anyone who comes in as an interim manager has an opportunity to. Whenever you're an interim manager, regardless of whether the plan is to keep you or not, it's an audition.
But to be fair to him, he gave Ben his chance. He gave Kane his chance, and I hate Sherwood, right? But if it wasn't for him, Harry Kane would not be a Tottenham Hotspur legend.
But I think you put any interim manager in that situation with the sheer desperation they had, and I think Kane. Listen.
Did you not hear the conversation he had with Levy about Kane and Soldado? Did you have?
I have heard that conversation. Yeah, Kane and
Soldado
was like,
even though I don't like Sherwood as a person, like I do believe that. Like,
I do, but then also I think if you're any manager in that situation who had Soldado perform as bad as he did.
I see where you're coming from, but
anyone goes like, right, hold on, Harry, right, let's say this now, yeah. Let's say, for example, that I don't know, some random person we've never heard of before takes over Spurs on a 6-month basis until the end of the season. Let me finish till the end of the season, right? And the injury crisis gets even worse, and they, out of sheer desperation, play some 17-year-old left back from the academy we've never heard of, and this kid goes, you know what? Fuck you, I'm going to take my chance. And he gives absolutely everything, and he's got enough ability, and he blitzes it. The reason the success has been out of a desperation, not Kane necessarily because he picked him out.
Kane was a situation because he was loaned out, 3 or 4 times before he came back.
Yeah, but I disagree because... To
be fair to Sherwood, he knew a lot about the youngsters because he did coach them for a very long time.
But in my opinion, though, the options we had up front were so fucking tragic that at this point...
Adebayor scored away at Old Trafford and we won the game.
Yeah, Adebayor was still shit. Come on, you and I both know that Adebayor was still shit.
I hate... The problem with Adebayor is when he wants to play, So if Sherwood got into play, I hate Sherwood, I hate his time at Tottenham. I thought the football was dreadful, right? And it was the tactics were crap. But he did, you have to give him credit. He gave Bentaleb his shot. I know Bentaleb only lasted 2 years. He gave a lot of the youngsters kind of some hope, really. That's how Mason, I think, broke through the season after, because I think Poch, to be fair to him, must have gone to the club and seen, look, and despite Sherwood's misdemeanors and a lot of, I didn't like him very much. I hate Sherwood. I didn't like him, but I had to give him credit where it's due, right? He brought through a lot of youngsters and gave, in some ways, Poch, not a foundation, I don't know if that's the right word, a skeleton for what youngsters to use.
Yeah.
And like Bentaleb, I don't think we would have seen Bentaleb if it wasn't for Sherwood. But his tactics were dreadful. Yeah. He just played 4-4-2 and put any winger or midfielder.
But this is my point, though. Right?
For me, I don't really count this time as did Levy back in because he was never going to stay more than 6 months.
But I also see it to the point of the manager has to take some responsibility because if he was good enough, he could have convinced Levy to keep him on. But he just wasn't good enough.
But that could argue the same about our current manager, so anyway.
Regardless, I would still say for Sherwood, I'd still say you can't even blame Levy really because it's not Sherwood didn't show him anything. I'd say it's 30% Sherwood's fault, 70% no one's fault. No one's fault in the sense of it was kind of predetermined that he was never going to stay, so you don't need to back him. 30% Sherwood's fault because, in my opinion, if you're an interim manager, it's an interview whether you think it is or not. If he'd have been good enough and if he'd have been tactically inept enough, at that point in time, realistically, he could have done enough to convince the club to keep him on for a year.
Levy, so I don't know whether it was just anything more than just his 6 months. Do what you can with
maybe, but what I'm saying from face value, we can only take it from face value. In my opinion, Sherwood should take some responsibility because if he's good enough tactically and we play well and we make a late push or whatever, then that's enough for the Levy's go, you know what, actually, I'll give you another 12 months.
In some ways, we were actually refreshingly honest about the squad we had at the time, but anyway.
Yeah, anyway, he's a prick.
I agree. I'm just saying he did do some good things.
2014, Maurizio Pochettino. Now, I'm going to say this now because people are going to say Poch was about, Poch was about. During the entirety of Pochettino's spell at Tottenham, was he backed? The answer is no. Right? However, people saying he wasn't backed after the Champions League final are wrong.
See, I disagree with that.
We went and had the most expensive transfer window we've ever had. We went and signed a player who was absolutely balling out in France. We signed his first choice in Lo Celso, right?
I don't think it was his first choice.
It was, because if you read the Argentina media at the time or whatever,
I think it was Bruno, but they didn't do the deal when they went for Lo Celso, personally.
I thought Bruno was the back end of the year before. By the time we got into the summer, that had died down. Ryan Sessegnon, we'd been linked to for donkey's years before that, like during Poch's whole tenure, pretty much.
No, I didn't actually want Sessegnon.
No, I didn't either. But I wanted him. I wanted him 2 years earlier at the beginning of Poch's reign when we were linked to him. Not 2 years, but I wanted him.
Rose.
Yeah, that at that point I could have seen it. Whereas I wanted him when Sessegnon was 16, not when we actually got him.
I like Sessegnon a lot. But for me, should I say what my opinion is? The first window, he was not really backed because I remember he wanted Jay Rodriguez and Schneiderlin and someone else from Southampton. He got none of them.
Yeah.
He got like Eric Dyer. I know he made something out of Dyer. Fazio, Istanbuli.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that, how catastrophic window that was for his first window. But they kind of didn't want to back him because they were like, he's a manager, came from Southampton.
He hadn't shown enough at that point to be worth backing.
Okay, the window after with Paul Mitchell, which I think was more Paul Mitchell than Levy at this point.
Yeah.
Mitchell and that club was one of the best managers we've ever had. Trippier, Alderweireld, who fixed our defence. Yeah. Sonny obviously came. Okay, we never knew what Sonny was going to turn into at that point, but he was. You could see as a player that it might.
Missed out Berahino and that was Son mental, wasn't it?
So for me, like that was like a 8 out of 10 window or something like that.
Yeah.
7, 8 out of 10. But Berahino thing at the time was a big thing. But the January
I remember being sat there. Hold on 2 seconds. I remember being sat there watching Sky Sports at the time. Yeah, refreshing. So pissed off we didn't get Berahino. Who the fuck is this random guy we've signed from abroad? Why didn't we just go and get an English proven player?
To be fair, we got to get him from Leverkusen for quite decent money.
Like, yeah, but
that was for me. That was more Mitchell picking out players for prices within the. This is why I talk a lot about the way our transfer policy is and the transfer works. That window, the difference was we kind of ticked all the boxes with most of the signings. They were players who were 23 to 24 or a bit older with Alderweireld who fit and just as a Poch's system. Style of play, fixed problems at the same time with Alderweireld and Trippier, who
even players in Poch's era, even players like Kevin Wimmer. Do you remember when Vertonghen got injured?
I like Wimmer
when Vertonghen got injured and Wimmer scored the own goal against Arsenal at the Emirates, and then after that he went on a mental run of games, and there were so many. I think there were so many small signings like that during Poch's era, which were really effective.
But for me, where it started to go wrong when the Paul Mitchell couldn't work with Levy anymore. That summer we signed in Kuda Janssen.
Yeah, that was when it went downhill.
That was the beginning of the end. Like that was the beginning of the end of them not backing him.
Yeah.
I know later on he did make something out of the crap signings he got given, like Sissoko.
Yeah.
He did make something off him, but it wasn't. Let's be honest, it wasn't.
It wasn't a lot. No.
Like it was a panic buy, and we all know it was a panic buy. And I know the fans probably backed him, and we kind of have to back the players. We don't have a choice, right? Like I said about Bergvall and Gray in this situation.
This is what interests me.
I don't rate them, but I still go there into the game. I'm like, come on, Gray, come on, Bergvall, because I don't have a choice. Like they play for Tottenham.
But this is what blows my mind, right? When you talk about that period with Poch and Tottenham, we just spoke about Kevin Wimmer. Another player we didn't sign for a lot, who was one of my favourite players in that period and one of the most underrated players. Wanyama, for me. When Wanyama and Dembele were fit together, my God, he was unbelievable.
We could do it like right now.
We had in that Poch era showed that you didn't need to. I remember having this conversation with you. At the back end of Poch's period. It wasn't about how much you spent. It wasn't about how much you spent. It was about how effective it was. In Poch's era, there were so many effective signings and so many ineffective signings. Like, if you put the value of Nkudu and Janssen together, it would have been about 25, 30 million in the end. And you put that on a 30 million other pound player that was effective, that might have been enough to push us over. But at that period in time, the club almost wanted quantity over quality. The amount of £5 to £10 signings we made
like
from
Foyth, and like
2015 to 2018. Like,
Foyth. By the way, he's been linked with Villa.
I know, and when he comes to Villa and smashed it in the Premier League, all you fucking cunts that replied to my Twitter in the last fucking 5 years, how long it's been, saying that we should have sold him, you'll all fucking regret
Isn't
it.
he like Emery's player though? Didn't he play
Yeah,
under Emery?
he's so underrated. It's
But like for
unbelievable.
me, like what I'm saying, for example, the Wanyama window is Wanyama was his signing, 100%. They were looking at him even before the window. They wanted him. Well, we linked with him that January actually, and you
Yeah,
know, Southampton drew with us. I think
yeah,
near the end of the season at home. I remember 1-1 or something.
yeah,
Wanyama was brilliant. But I'm saying is they earmarked him. Paul Mitchell earmarked him at the beginning of the window, which is why we got it done quite quick.
yeah,
But after that, the window went to shit because Mitchell fell out with Levy, which is pretty publicly done. Like you can
yeah.
go
It's
read about it.
very
And this is where it all
bad.
started to go apart. They brought in like some other guy who wasn't Poch's man. And yes, Poch got on with it because I guess he was too invested in the club at the point. And Poch, for me, and Joel were the two managers who, hand on heart, can say they love the club.
Yeah,
Like, and they were Spurs fans basically, really.
yeah.
And which is why Joel was really upset that things happened how they did. We got sacked at half time,
And
and the
kind of the
fans were really
same for
upset.
Poch as well, really.
Poch was the same. Obviously, he left in the way he left.
Even though I wanted Poch to leave, looking back on it, I think the day he left was the day the club really started to die because we almost turned into. It sounds really bad, but under Poch, it wasn't just about. When we talk about the Tottenham way, we talk about loving the way you play and whatever. It really felt like that under Poch. When Poch went, and obviously we're going to
I
talk
think
about his
Redknapp was a
replacement.
bit different, even though he's my favourite one. He's a bit different because I don't think he loved Tottenham. I just think he loved football. I know
Yeah. But I think with Poch, when he left, I think it kind of felt like that was
that
the
was the end.
day football died at Tottenham, and it reverted back to we're going to get results at all costs. And
I don't know. I actually thought with Poch, that was Levy just trying to save face.
do you
In
think he
hindsight.
regrets sacking him?
Now he does, but the past 2-3 years, bear in mind Conte did get us our top four. I don't think he does. But if we look at the situation we're on now, I wouldn't be surprised if he is sitting there, especially because we could have gone for Poch last summer.
Yeah.
We should have really gone for Poch last summer. And thinking, oh, if I just kept Poch, if I brought him back last summer,
Admitting my defeat, repair the damage.
probably Levy. I'm not sure we're talking about Levy anyway.
We've said it before. He won't
Put away his pride and admit that he was wrong and bring Poch back. This is my biggest issue. This is why I don't think it. I'm not saying it won't ever happen. I'd just be surprised
Yeah.
if it ever does happen because he would have to admit defeat. And the problem is if he brings him back and he doesn't back him, I mean, it's toxic already. But
yeah. This time, Poch will come out and do it vocally and louder than what he
I
did.
think the fans, like, if they don't back Poch the second time with Levy, like Levy's done. Like the guy might as well just walk out the club, like because Poch has so much goodwill with the fans. It's just. Yeah.
How would you rate that then? I would say.
I think 20% Poch, 80% Levy.
I'm going to say 30. I'm going to say 30% Poch and 70%.
The reason I say it's so high is the Paul Mitchell thing. That's
the reason why I'm lowering it is for me the transfer window where he was given the money. I think every single signing he got wrong.
But I would argue that window we didn't sign enough players. It was meant to be a rebuild. We signed 3 players.
We didn't, but the players we signed were waste of space.
No, what I'm saying is I could agree with Ndombele. Lo Celso, I still don't agree personally. I know he's Argentine, but I still don't agree personally. The Sessegnon, I'll give him that. But I remember arguing with people on Twitter, David, that window saying they were saying, well, 3 players on big money, or whatever, 2 or 3 players with big money was a rebuild. I'm like, that's not a rebuild. 3 players is not a rebuild. You need like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, but obviously you're
okay. We'll meet in the middle then. We'll go 24. We'll meet in the middle then. We'll go 75, 25. Yeah. I'm going to ignore my mate because he was only an interim. Nuno. Now you know my opinions on Nuno. And
no, it wasn't Jose. It was Jose next. What are you talking
sorry,
about?
I'm reading the wrong bit of a thing. Sorry.
Jose, then it was Nuno.
Jose. Right. Listen.
No, he wasn't.
He absolutely wasn't backed. What annoyed me the most is the players that Jose earmarked, like Højbjerg, for example, was absolutely brilliant for Jose's style of play.
You've got 1 player. in Højbjerg, I think, and that's
Yeah.
the whole thing.
He wanted a centre back. He wanted an experienced centre back, and I think at the time that would have been brilliant.
Rodon.
And
Yeah.
people always. This is my biggest gripe, and I've said this for years. My biggest gripe is the fact that people always said that Jose was so defensive. He wasn't. Jose started out playing attacking football, playing creative football. We were scoring goal after goal after goal after goal. The minute our defensive mistakes started piling on, Jose started to retreat to counteract those mistakes, which is what people were requesting Ange to do. And then the more pressure you put on the defence, even more mistakes came about. And it was a calamity of errors that fell off a cliff drastically. And in that January, it could have had a centre-back. And I can tell you now for a fact that the club had no intention to keep him, because if you had the intention to keep him, you go in and get him a centre-back in that.
That was his first January, wasn't it?
Yeah. You go in and get him a centre-back in that January, and we didn't get him a centre-back, and then we sack him before the League Cup final, and that in itself is an absolute calamity decision. For me, I'm 10% Jose, 90% Levy with this, because, and this is taking out my love for Jose, and I've got a little Jose statue down there, you can't see.
Don't worry, Jose's a special one for a reason.
Exactly, but I love Jose. I always wanted to manage our club, and he came in with the full belief he was going to be the one to win that trophy drought. I think, had we have had the fans there,
does he make a difference?
I think it would have made a difference, because in the period where we were free-flowing and scoring an abundance of goals, that would have gave people enough belief to deal with the slight retraction of the defensive line. And then it got to the where we didn't start out playing fire in the back park in the bus with Jose.
We ended up having to change it because of
we beat United 6-1. We beat Southampton. Was it 5-1?
The game that 6-0? Jose, I know obviously Science did as well, but you know when Bergwijn hit the post and we lost to Liverpool, that was the game where it started to go wrong.
Yeah,
but that was
there were a couple of times though. There were a couple of times in that period where it started to go wrong, where it was just sheer unluckiness. There was nothing Jose could have done, and then the defensive mistakes started to come in. Dyer was becoming more of a liability. Lloris was becoming more of a liability. And he had no choice but to drop that defensive line to exactly what people are begging Ange to do. Oh, we're not taking the chances, or we're making more defensive mistakes, whatever.
Ange, in my opinion, had better defenders than Jose had.
I don't disagree with that at all. But this is my point. And people are still requesting Ange to drop the line to help protect the defence. In the same way, if the fans that we have now, or the people watching now, could go back and rewatch Jose in the same period with the defensive mistakes we had, I think they'd be saying the same thing. Drop the defensive line, protect the defenders. The defenders are shit. But do you know what I mean? It didn't work because you lost something offensively. And Kane was playing almost like a false nine with Son running beyond for Jose, right? When he went from being a false nine almost to being a 10 was as we retreated. And then you kind of have Kane on the edge of that final third of the pitch being effective. The minute we retreated and it dragged Kane into midfield, we stopped scoring the goals. We were still leaking the goals. And then he needed a centre-back in the January to stop the leaking, to allow us to be more expansive again. And it fell off a cliff.
It was a West Ham game, remember? 3-3.
3-3, yeah. And
I think that's when he realised that the players he had were mentally weak.
And seeing him being sacked before the final is still not right. So for me, I'm
still angry about that.
I'm going 10% Jose and 90% Levy for that. It's horrific. I'm not going to talk about Mourinho. Nuno. Now, I think Nuno was really hard done by, again, because he won Manager of the Month the month before.
Didn't he come in after the window or near the end of the window? Am I wrong?
No, he was in at the start. He was right at the start of the window, literally right at the start of the window. He wasn't particularly backed. He got players that fit his style, but weren't necessarily the players he wants. So you can kind of say he was and he wasn't backed. He was backed with he got Emerson, Romero. Like, he got players that fit his style, but the problem is we didn't allow him to play the way he wanted to play. Paratici sold Nuno to Levy by saying, remember what he did at Valencia when he was so attacking? Because I remember, God rest his soul, doing the podcast, the original Two of Our Own, when I first had it with Ramon, and there's a whole episode, you can't see it anymore because it's private, because I keep it for myself now, but we did a whole episode on Nuno and his Valencia team, and we broke down his tactics and what players will play what position, and now we just hear and argue. That was a lot of detail we used to go back into. And I remember being at Ramon, and we really could see, because we were linked with Fonseca first, and we did the whole thing on Fonseca in the back. I remember,
Conte,
do you remember the whole no to Gattuso shit?
yeah.
That was brilliant. Then we were linked with
Honest
Paulo
made me good.
Fonseca, and again, Paulo Fonseca played attacking football, but was always vulnerable defensively,
Sounds a lot like London anyway.
which has been seen by his job since. And then, obviously, we were in with Conte. We did a whole episode about we really want Conte. Conte was said no. Then it was Nuno. I don't think Nuno was given enough time.
Remember the hostage video? We'll make you proud.
Yeah, there were two things for me with Nuno. Number one, he wasn't given enough time, and number two, he wasn't given enough freedom in the way he played.
No, 100%. I mean, with the freedom, I think the freedom way he wanted to play was a bigger issue because they got him in, and I remember obviously trying to convince the fans they were going to play an attacking style, blah blah. Bear in mind, he came from Wolves where he played back like five.
Yeah.
Very much, and they were like he wouldn't give him the freedom to pick the way he played. I don't think he was backed in the window really much either. But at the same time, I know
I think he was backed in proportion for the manager that he is.
I know we're looking at Forest. I look at Forest now and thinking, oh, we should come in. Like for me, I think even if we gave him, very good players, I still think it wouldn't have worked out because I just don't think they would have let him play the way he wanted to play with them.
Yeah.
And I mean, we saw the attacks were diabolical. I think partly he mentally, I hate to say it this way because I think maybe
he felt like the job was too big for him from the start.
And to be fair to him, I think deep down he knew that.
Yeah,
you could say on the touchline, and it was not like Andrew's being very bullish and trying to say face. Like I think Nuno will be humble enough to admit that if you spoke to him in person. Like, and this is what I mean by
for Nuno, it was too good of an opportunity to pass up on. He kind of wanted out of Wolves anyway. Like it felt like. It felt like he was taking it because he didn't want to sit there in 10 years' time and regret not taking it. If he goes and he doesn't do it and he can go back to a mid-table club like he has done.
I have nothing against him personally. Like I don't think he did anything which pissed me off in terms of like I know
he always came across really well. He held himself really well. I
kind of felt sorry for him with the hostage video because I knew that was hostage.
I think for me, the thing with Nuno, like I say, I think he was backed adequately for the manager he was from where he came from.
Before,
but he wasn't. No. Right, I think he was backed in terms of the transfer window, in terms of the what he'd shown at Wolves and what his ceiling was at Wolves. I think he was backed adequately for a very first summer in a news team. But the squad wasn't horrific at that point. It wasn't torn apart at that point.
He got skipped as our best player, was that?
Yeah, there was some stability to it. Like it was kind of one of those summers where give a player, a manager, one or two players, see what they can do, work out what works and what doesn't, and then next summer, then you do a bit more of a clear out. Yeah. But he never got given that chance, number one. And number two, absolutely, he was not allowed the freedom to play the way he was playing. The one thing I will say, and I mentioned this every single time I talk about Nuno, Harry knows what's coming, is if I met Nuno in the street tomorrow, I'd shake his hand, I'd give him a hug, and I'd say thank you. Because obviously I talk about two of our own and when it started with Ramon that summer, and obviously you guys know he passed away the week of our first game under Nuno, and we won 1-0 against Man City. Son scored. And that weekend, I went down to London with flyers with a photo of him on it and like a paragraph about him and the kind of person he was. QR codes to go help fundraise for the GoFundMe, and it was incredible. The amount of Spurs fans I met, the amount of people donated, it was insane. And I'd always be grateful to Nuno for that because it felt like, even though obviously I said goodbye at his funeral, it felt like that was my way of saying goodbye a little bit. And I'll always respect Nuno for that, even though it was the players and whatever. For me, that for me. If someone says to me, "What does Nuno Espirito Santo time at Tottenham mean to you?"
I guess for you, it's
that's what it means to me. Exactly.
But I don't know what the word is. Sorry, not attachment, but as in, he gave you a memory that was related to something which is personal to you. I don't think attachment, something else. I can't remember what it is.
So I'm gonna say with Nuno, I'm gonna say 40-60, yeah, because I think the 20% of the 40 of his side is him naturally just not being the pedigree of manager as the people before him.
The right manager.
I think 10% of that is the fact that he wasn't allowed to play the way he was allowed to play, and then the 10% of that is a byproduct of that is how many players you sign. I still don't think he had a bad transfer window. I just think it was it was the definition of square peg in a round hole. You know,
like I said, with Nuno, I remember that's when I started going on Spaces, like that summer, especially with managers. Like I have nothing against him personally. Like I said with you, like if I saw him on the street, I would probably shake his hand. I have nothing against him personally. I don't hate him. I don't
He's a
think he was a
very
bad
likable
human
guy as
being. He was
well. Very
actually a likable
humble, down
person.
to earth.
Likable person. Like I
Yeah,
actually liked him. Like, he seemed all right, but I kind of felt sorry for him in the end.
yeah,
Even though I wanted him out, I kind of felt sorry for him because I was like, this guy's clear out of his depth.
yeah,
He clearly is mentally not strong enough to handle it.
yeah,
And I wasn't like that game that we shouted Levy out wasn't really aimed at Nuno as such. It was more,
yeah,
I think, our frustration, the fact that he appoints the manager who was probably capable of doing stuff, and Forest is a much better fit for him because they've given him the freedom to play how he wants, and there's less expectations at that club, and it's probably why
yeah,
they are doing a bit better because he has less pressure on him in that respect. At Tottenham was too big of a club for him, I think.
yeah, 100%.
Wasn't the right fit because they didn't let him play how he wanted. He kind of seemed a bit lost, and some of his tactics were a bit suspect. But I don't have anything against him personally. Like I didn't, even when on the space, I was like, I hate Nuno. He's the worst man. I just didn't
It's
have
one
any
of
like.
them. When he left, it felt inevitable,
But I didn't feel like
but there was
I
no bitterness towards
like.
it at
Yeah, I
all.
didn't like. It wasn't like. I just think it was the wrong man. But if that makes sense, I don't know.
On to who was meant to be the manager that summer, and who
Okay.
ended up replacing him in the end, Antonio Conte. Now, for me, first of all, it always felt like it was set up to fail because of the whole. Do you remember the whole Fab thing about like all the things Spurs were doing to convince him? If you have to convince somebody that extent, it's never going to last.
To join, yeah, yeah.
Um,
18-month contract, wasn't it? I think.
yeah, I think I'd say this is a 40-60% split. My
I would even
reason
say
being, my
70,
reason
70,
being,
30, to be
my
honest.
reason being, right, is even though
Conte, yeah.
Conte wasn't backed, and even though we got so far into him and then the second season fell off cliff, whatever, I still think that Conte's one, and I said this when we signed him, Conte's one of those managers, sorry, that you've got to be careful who you give him player wise, because you look at the mess he left at Chelsea when he left, like the amount of players that
The
had,
Diego Costa thing.
just the whole squad, like
Yeah.
most of that Chelsea squad had to be ripped apart and started again after Conte, and we weren't really in a position where we could afford to do that. So really, we needed a manager that was going to buy players that were going to be able to be used under other managers, which I don't think was ever going to happen under Conte, really. Or we were going to go, right, we're going to spend a shit ton of money for 2 years, and then in 2 years, we're going to sell all of that crap and redo it again under a new manager when he's left. So actually, in hindsight, even though that summer me and Ramon really wanted Conte, and a lot of Spurs fans wanted Conte, I think
I
we were
still want it
stuck.
now.
I think we were stuck in the mindset of Conte can win. Not, yes, Conte can win, but he's going to blow up the entire block when he leaves.
To
And
be fair to him, I'll give him an extra 5% to leave because of the rant before he left.
all right, yeah, all right, then I'll go 65-35.
Like, because for me with Conte, this is how I view it. Like the first window in January, I could argue in 80% of it he was backed because of Bentancur Kulusevski,
Yeah,
but he did also allude to the fact, and if you go back and read his interview after we signed those players, he said the club wants to sign younger players on lesser salaries. He did warn us. I remember reading this actually, and I was like, why is he telling us this now? Does he know something we
but
don't know?
to be fair
Definitely
though,
reflecting the something we just had,
the
right?
one thing I
So
would say with that though, the one thing I would say that though is when you look at what Conte actually wanted, Conte wanted people. Perisic is the only exception I made because I thought he was brilliant at Spurs.
I love Perisic, man.
But I would say 95% of the people that Conte signed in previous jobs that outside of the Italian league, because it's easy to get rid of
Hmm.
pensioners in the Italian league, 90% of the players he signed that were between 30 and 35 were at other clubs were on extortionate wages. They struggled to get rid of them, and it set the club back 2 years afterwards.
Then you say that, but you got to tune out of flipping Victor Moses, Chelsea man. Like,
No, that's what I'm saying. You got to tune out
yeah,
of him. But after he went,
in
he
a long
wasn't
though. In a
suitable
long.
for another manager. Like,
I know that's because he played a certain system where you
but this
have.
is my point, though. This is my point, though. If you're going to do that, you have to understand that you're going to spend 200 million to get it to work, and then 200 million repairing the damage when it's
Then
fucked off.
for me, this is the problem with the club in itself. I mean, I think rather than saying we need to buy a player to fit a system, if the club want to go this route where they buy players for the managers, I know it sounds really messed up because I don't agree with it, but I'm just going to go with this narrative for like 5 seconds. You need to be buying elite players, say an elite centre half, an elite
Yeah,
striker, an elite central midfielder, play in positions where in any system they'll fit because
Yeah,
they're playing
yeah,
a spine position. I say call it a spine position because
yeah,
wingers, you need to sign a winger who's kind of like versatile. I guess you can't
yeah.
really sign an out and out winger. I know now there's most of them inverted, but like you'd have to sign players where, for example, under Conte, Bastoni would have been a perfect one because you'd imagine he would be probably
He
good
can play into
playing
anyone.
now.
Yeah.
Like so, you need to find elite players in a spine position. Like you always need a central midfielder, you always need a centre back,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
always need
You
a flank
basically
player.
need a striker, which obviously we had in Keynes. You don't need that. We basically needed a world-class central midfielder, a world-class centre-back, and a world-class goalkeeper that would have been
That fit
suitable,
any
even if
system.
we change. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And the minute the club knew they weren't prepared to do that, that should have been the plug on Conte. Because either you've got to accept the fact you're going to go and sign mid-level players that in his system will hit great potential that will last. It's like
Small
it's
periods.
like
Yeah.
lighting a flame and it going all the way up to the top and coming straight back down again. They're players in Conte's system. You talk about Victor Moses. Victor Moses' form went like that for
Yeah,
Chelsea,
I know,
and then
I know.
afterwards it crashed and they couldn't get rid of him. And
I
he'd
don't
been
know,
offered
I
a
know.
new. And Alonso was the same. And do you know what I mean? And I look at his Chelsea mould, and in a way, I'm kind of glad it didn't last with Conte because I know a lot of Chelsea fans talk to a lot of Chelsea fans all the time, and the damage that Conte did with some of his signings was just
I just remember the Costa thing. That's the thing I remember.
it was just difficult and I didn't and we wouldn't have the thing is we wouldn't have repaired the damage. So if we'd
I
have
think it would
made
have been like
too much
a fling, basically. That's what.
yeah, exactly. If we'd have made too many Conte signings, then the next 10 managers would have
But
been
we did kind of make
fucked.
the irony was is we made one Conte signing, I would argue, in Porro, and then he left like a few months later. Like
Yeah.
he didn't get to see the fruits of his labour that he finally got a player he wanted on the last day of the window where he could have signed him like 30 days before. But
Yeah.
anyway, for me, like that was a player right now who I love Porro, by the way. And he's one of my favourite players. And this is the problem we have with Porro, I guess, right now is people are like play him on the wing, and then people are like, oh no, he should be playing. It's a debate. You know
People
what I mean?
say what?
Play him on the wing. It's not just me, bro. But anyway,
Exactly.
but like what I'm trying to say is he's a player who was signed as a wing back. Dogi's another one who was signed as a wing back,
And
and
now they're
we're
playing
like,
centre mid.
yeah, playing as number 10 pretty much.
Anyway.
But like what I'm trying to say is those are players that were signed for his specific system. They didn't even get to see through, which is
So
why
what are we saying
So
with
what I'm saying
Conte
is,
then? We
if
say
he instead of signing Porro that and spending the big money on big money was it 30, 40 million on Porro?
yeah, 40 million.
Anyway, but like instead of say dropping that January that money on Porro, that summer should have been spent on signing like an elite goalkeeper or an elite centre back that you should have signed in Bastoni.
Yeah.
So because those players would have fit any system, I was saying they should concentrate on doing that. And then Adogi wasn't that expensive, was he? So
No.
instead of
And
dropping
then at
the
least
money,
then you're making 20, 30 million pound signings. They're kind of interchangeable manager per manager,
you'd
but at
have to
least the
find a
spy
wing
stays
back
the same.
who can also play as like fullbacks, which is
Yeah.
a big ask. But I'm saying the club would have to have done certain types of specific player profiles to kind of fit
Yeah.
long term. If they played the system, so now because now we have a manager really who's playing. He should be playing the system the old manager's using. That's how messed up this club is. But anyway, carry on.
But yeah, so
Sorry.
we agree 65-35 because I
Yeah.
definitely think Conte does take part of blame. I don't want to talk about his rant because I don't think it's relevant to his proper time as a manager. But I think the fact that Conte is a short-term manager, the fact that he's ruined squads and left people in ruins when he's left.
I actually still like him because I just love his passion. That's just me.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's one of those managers that I loved him before he managed us, and I don't like him anymore.
I still liked it when he managed, but he's a bit Marmite. He's a bit like Jose, I think.
Yeah. Then two more temporary managers, Stellini and Mason. Again, can't really talk about.
One
And
game was Slovenia, I think.
on to the last one. And I know it's always for too long because we've spoken about it endlessly for weeks on end. But I think I'd currently go 70-30 for Ange. And just hear me out for a second because I know you're going to be more swinging towards 65-35 or 60-40. The reason why I'm saying 70-30 is because, number one, the board didn't go for their first or second or third choice manager. So there was clearly limited planning. And that's nothing against Ange, right? He's given opportunities to pass down.
You know, Scott Munn.
Yeah.
Levy let him pick the manager though.
But this is what I'm saying. Our first choice was Slot. Our second choice was Almerin. Our third choice
Yeah,
was
Cameron's not going to join.
I can't remember our third choice. No, but what I'm saying at the time, like whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Slot
So
was definitely first
they
choice,
they
though.
were our choices, right? We didn't get our first, second, or third choice, so already we're on the back foot. Levy knew Ange's style. Levy knew Ange's demands. Levy knew everything about this. So if I'm Daniel Levy and I'm sat in my office, this shouldn't be a surprise. This shouldn't be news to you because you know the profile of the manager. Cool. You know the kind of players he needs. You know the category of players that you need. But you also know that he goes and signs 10, 15 million pound players from leagues you've never heard of. And if he's
And
trusted to do that, those players absolutely ball under him because
like
he knows that's
Joko,
what he wants.
is that the Celtics?
Jota, yeah, like Jota or whatever his name is. Like,
Yeah.
he was like a £10 million. So he's gone back to Celtic now, but he's a Celtic hero. And he was bought for peanuts, a mid-level player with playing experience, but not in a major league. But Ange 100% wanted. And the minute he can, and I know it's a different league, but the league he's come from is respected to the league he's going. There's still a significant gap. And he balled out for fucking Celtic. So the reason why I'm saying 70-30% Ange, yes, Ange's current problems do play a part. But you don't. If you go right, let me ask you this: if you go and buy a unit, right, you go and buy a TV stand, and it says you need a screwdriver and you need a wrench to put it together, and you go, "Fuck it, I'm buying this TV stand off Argos. Doesn't matter. This is the one I want. In an ideal world, this is how I want it to look in my room." You get there, and go, "Shit, I ain't got the right tools for it." Fuck. Well, I read the instructions before I bought it. I read the description. I knew I needed those tools. I haven't really got myself. Do you know what TV stand, mate? It's your fault you need a screw to be tied in. It's your fault you need a fucking screwdriver to hold yourself together. Not really, though, is it, mate? That was already packaged when you picked it. In the same way, Ange was already packed and picked when we picked him. So this shouldn't be any surprise to Daniel Levy.
The problem is Ange has said certain things to the media, right, about the signings. And by the way, I'm leaving out yet, but I think a lot of the signings were his. Like I look at Brennan Johnson first and foremost.
Yeah.
Werner, I hate to say it, is probably his signing because he signed him twice. No sane manager in the right mind should have got.
The only signing that I don't think was his.
Bergvall, no. Gray,
I think it was.
I kind of 50-50 on Berg.
I think Gray was as well. I think, honestly, the only player that we've signed under Ange that wasn't an Ange choice, I still think Werner. I think he was told...
See, I'm different. I think it was Gray.
No, I think Gray... I think he wanted
No, I'm thinking Bergvall, sorry. I'm 50-50 about Gray. I don't know whether it's I think, for me, that's the signing, I think, of all parties, because, to be fair to Ange, he does play Gray a lot.
Yeah.
And I think he probably thought... Oh, you know what, mate? I can.
He put a lot of trust in Gray very, very quickly, which says to me
and
that
the other he hasn't really done that. That's why I say Bergvall's not probably his. But Solanke's his, Werner's his, because you don't sign a player like Werner twice unless you're like, I don't know.
But I still think he was told you need a striker and a winger.
No,
you can have one choice if you want.
Werner that season, yeah. Like, let's be honest, the guy was on smoking some crack, bro. And then for me, like a lot of the signings were his, but what I will say, which is why I'm 50-50, is they were his signings, a lot of them, but they weren't, say, his first, second, or third, especially when I look at the wing options. Like, I know Odeberg was his, apparently Odeberg he really wanted, but he did want Neto on top of it. Gallagher was one of his guys, but I do
This
think
is my point. I don't think the signings weren't his.
Two players that window where we missed out. Like, for me, Werner's definitely his signing, because you don't sign a player like that twice unless you wanted him. Like, who does that? But anyway, but like, for me, I can see your point about
my guys never seen me play Football Manager in desperation.
The thing is, this is why, for example, someone like me, someone like Gray, and this is the type of person who gets Gray. I'm sure in a few years he might be a great top player. Again, it's down to just, we'll see what happens. The same with Bergvall, we'll see what happens. A lot of our fan base, I hate to say it, because a lot of our players right now are dead on their feet.
Yeah.
They're dying. A lot of them are tired, and Gray and Bergvall, to be honest, are quite fresh. Like, they ain't played as much as the rest. They are shining because the rest of them are like dead and not playing well. And these are like the shining lights that people are holding on to try and like be positive, I guess. I don't know. Like, they've done all right.
Yeah.
I still don't think they're as good as everyone says they are. I'm sorry, you can crucify for me for this.
I think you'll kind of regret Gray. I think that'll be the one you'll regret. I don't necessarily. I'm still not convinced on Bowen, but
this whole word about Diego generational, I've not seen anything generational from him. I
yeah.
applaud them for their effort, but I'm not seeing anything special from them. Anyway, but besides the point, these players are young players. So for me, those were more than likely, maybe Gray's is a different story, but club signings because I can't see Ange picking out Bergvall from like the Swedish league.
But you say that though. But when Ange was at Celtic, the amount of absurd players from random leagues he picked out, young players, like he has a track record of doing
Especially
that.
from a guy that says, I always win things in my second season.
Right, because we need to wrap it up now because I'm going to go to the gym.
But let me land. Hold on. So for me, it's 50-50. Like he didn't get his first or second choice signings, probably, or third choice maybe even.
Yeah.
But he did get a lot of the players he wanted, like Solanke, Johnson, big money. Gray, I could argue is his. But forget Bergwall, forget some of the younger players. Like Odobert, was his apparently. He wanted Odobert and Neto, I heard. Gallagher was definitely someone he wanted, but he didn't go for an alternative, so I kind of blame him a bit for that because we're never going to get him from Chelsea. And that first window, but also he's a massive yes man. So like he got a bit of what he wanted, a bit of didn't. So I'm saying 50-50.
I think he got a bit. I'd agree with that principle, and I would be 50-50 on that. Apart from the fact that Levy knew what he was
saying. These signs are mine. So like,
well, this is my point, though, right? You can say these signings are yours, but if you've also asked for two experienced players on top of that, Gallagher and Neto, for argument's sake. All right, we've not had that many central midfield injuries, but we're getting injuries. No, I think if we were having this conversation again in 2 years' time with a completely different manager, and we were looking back on Ange and reflecting like we've done with the other managers, it's easy to look back in hindsight. Like my opinion of Conte now is completely different to my opinion of Conte 3 years ago because I can look back and reflect on it and analyze it in a greater detail. I think you'd be leaning a bit more to 60-40 in sort of like.
I just don't think
2-3 years.
They gave him 350 mil. Like that's a lot of money. I don't agree with the signings he made with that money, and I don't think all of them are his. Like I said, that's like 50-50. But at the same time, like he's given the most backing out of any manager we've had.
But also in the same sense, it was the biggest squad turnover from the squad we had to the style of play we were going to.
Then I just talk about Maignan, who had like 10 new players to work with. Santini had 10 new players to work with compared to, I know he wasn't there the year before, but the turnover of that window, if you go back, I know you weren't.
But this is what I'm saying though, even though we're signing so many players, I feel like maybe it doesn't feel like we've had such a big turnover because.
Then he only signed one first team player really last summer in Solanke. But then Odobert was.
But then based on your logic,
Gray right? I would argue, I think that Gray, in my opinion, was a signing for all parties that kind of ticked everyone's box.
But based on your logic though, you turned around and said that we've only got one first team player. But if he wanted Neto and he wanted Gallagher, right? Then that would have been 3 first team players. One who's kind of a youngster but closer to the first team, and 2 youngsters. All of a sudden, that completely changes the dynamic of the transfer window.
He wanted Odobert though.
Yeah, but again, Odobert and Bergwall fall into the category of youngsters that aren't quite ready for the first team.
That's his signing. I'm sorry, that's his signing.
I forget. I don't even include him in the conversation. Anyway, I'm still going to stick 70-30 because with him,
50-50 hard. So with
I'm going to stick 70-30 because I think with Ange, you pay for the box. You know what you're getting in the box. You've chosen not to have the right tools. You refuse to buy them. It's your own fault. Overall, the summary of this is Levy's a cunt, and I hope the guy steps on Lego. With his bare fucking feet.
I was going to say something worse. I was like,
I can't say what I really want to say because that makes listen, there's some sort of bad karma level buttons that I won't push. But I think I'm at the point now where I just can't bother anymore. Like I said, we already spoke about the game and the atmosphere and the toxicity and whatever it starts. So I'm not going to repeat myself. But I think it just shows that continuously, endlessly, time and time again, they've been in charge of our club for what?
20 years.
24 years now. And we're sat here and we'll be saying the same thing when I'm 50 and the same thing when I'm 70 if I live that long. Do you know what I mean? It's the same problems over and over again.
Because we're on a recording and it doesn't matter what time this information comes out. So I've been told a lot of people that Lewis wants to sell. Joe Lewis actually wants to sell. Levy does not want to sell. Also, Lewis's daughter supports Liverpool, so she's not interested.
Yeah.
in running the club. His son's not into football, apparently. I don't know. It's very weird. But what I'm saying is, Levy is the reason why we're still here
Yeah.
because he's gone.
It's funny you say that actually because very quickly
I've
because
always argued for me, Levy was more problem than Enoch. That's just my opinion.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and Levy has a couple of choices now, right? He either puts a consortium together and buys Enoch out, and then stays in control. He either sells his shares to Enoch, and then Enoch sell the full club,
Sell the club. Sell
which
the
he's not
club.
going to do that because he'll lose control.
He's too selfish to do
He
that.
either he either sells he either sells the club on behalf of Enoch and still remains control. Enoch get the funds from it. Joe Lewis gets the funds from it. Levy stays in charge with whoever takes over.
Which is what he
Or
wants.
Levy drags it out as long as possible till Joe Lewis dies, and then tries to get the
But we hear with random Joe Lewis.
Well, right, but this is my point. Hold on, this is my point, though, right? Because if Joe Lewis dies, I believe his daughter becomes a majority shareholder.
Yeah, she's not interested in football though.
Her first thing is going to be
fan.
to sack him, right?
She's a Liverpool fan. Yeah.
Her first thing is going to be to sack him and then sell the club. She won't sell the club first. She'll sack him and then sell the club because she hates Levy and that'll be to spite him. So he knows he's got until that guy drops dead to either get a consortium together to buy the club to stay in control, sell his shares, go and buy a championship club or a League One club and do it again from a lower level, which if I was Levy, that's probably what I would do. Go and get a sleeping giant in the championship, buy them out. Yeah, exactly, and try and rebuild them up that way. Or stay as they are, roll the dice and hope to God somebody else big comes in to buy the club and he can piggyback onto it. I think he knows his time is running out, which is why he's trying to censor the club as much as possible. He knows his time is running out and he knows that if Joe Lewis goes and his daughter gets control of this football club, he will cease to exist. You won't even be able to say his name around Tottenham.
We're praying for someone to die. The way
I'm not praying for Joe Lewis to die, obviously not. But I was hoping he got
convicted
from his criminal actions last year.
It's called the sack Levy.
But I think Daniel Levy, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 18 months, Daniel Levy puts a consortium of business owners together, business owners, not people who give a shit about a football club, and tries to buy the club and stay in charge.
I think the kind of situation on the footballing side, I don't know, because I don't know a football club anymore. But the situation is in with Ange, I think, is a talking issue. And I'm going to be very brief about it because I know I've got to go.
Yeah.
For me,
then it's just a rude way to go to the gym. So
the rock in a hard place, right? Yeah. So if he sacks Ange, people like you or people who weren't Levy out, right? There must still be people who are not Levy out but love Ange, right?
Yeah.
Will turn on Levy. So he's kind of screwed in that respect. Now, if he keeps him, whether you like it or not, he runs the risk of number one getting relegated. Sorry, he runs the risk, and even more fans turning on him. So he's kind of at this point.
I think it's worse for him because if he gets relegated, Joe Lewis will sell straight away. So he knows that there'll be the amount of Arab or the amount of foreign business owners or the amount of Americans there will be swarming around our club like sharks when you're stranded in the ocean. If we get relegated, they will swarm and they will swarm. Joe Lewis will accept whatever the first offer is and Levy will cease to exist in that regard anyway. So I honestly truly believe Levy's time is limited because something's got to give and it will give, but it's how far is he going to drill it into the ground before that happens?
I think
that remains to be seen.
Yeah. But that's what I'm thinking about the football situation. That the Ange thing is a big thing because he ticks a lot of he doesn't tick my boxes, but he ticks a lot of boxes for fans in terms of style and the way what he's saying, and he's brainwashed fans and he's and because a problem also with Ange is if he sacks him, he loses his yes man. I don't know him saying that, but and he will have to bring in a manager where he might be more defensive. Probably piss off a load more fans. Plus, he will be sacking Andrew, a very big fan favourite, as much as I don't like him.
Yeah.
Right? So he's kind of screwed in the
This is what I kind of hope.
If he leaves it too late to sack
I hope he sticks with Ange to the as close to the
relegation
90th minute as possible. He sacks him when we're at the point of relegation. It's too late. We get relegated. The owners, the Americans or whatever, swarm. Joe Lewis sells to somebody like Bournemouth owners, for example, and Levy ceases to exist. I think that, and then we bounce back up in a year. Within 2 years we've rebuilt. I honestly think that's probably the best case scenario, apart from the fact that he doesn't wake up tomorrow. And even though he is a cunt and even though he is a cancer, I still wouldn't wish that upon anyone. Not
Also,
in a public recording anyway.
I know you think that relegation's like solvable. Now
It's not. I know it's not. We will listen. When we get closer to the end of the season, we'll have a. If we're still in this predicament, we'll have a full relegation episode.
Because ENIC have saddled us with so much debt. Like I hate to bring. I think there's a chance that we could go in administration if we go down because we'll be fucked with funds.
Yeah.
Like we'll be fucked because
listen. It's only the 21st of January. We haven't been relegated yet. That's like we're going to say that for a whole different week. Others we're going to be here forever.
Even though I hate Ange, I hope the God he starts winning some games so we don't get relegated.
Yeah, well, it says you, but then you were saying like 5 years ago that you'd take us getting relegated to get rid of the owner. So anyway, regardless of the point.
And we'll have this podcast next year anyway.
Next week, we're going to talk about the Europa League campaign, the highs, the lows, positives, negatives, what we can expect in knockout rounds, because by that point, we will have finished it. Yes, we would have finished it because the game's this week.
You finished it on the 30th of January.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Drop us a 5-star review on Spotify. Follow the TikTok as well. My match day vlog with my little brother's up there now as well, which is great. Harry, happy birthday for Friday. I'll message you obviously on Friday anyway, but happy birthday for Friday. I'd say fingers crossed Spurs will win at the weekend, but it's not going to happen. And as always, we'll catch you next week. And come on, you Spurs!
Come on, you Spurs.